Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Dan Hiscock, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 2, Richard Lovell. Today we commemorate the 105th anniversary of the mounted charge of the 4th Light Horse Brigade into Beersheba. In 1917, the fortified town of Beersheba anchored the eastern end of the Turkish defensive line extending to Gaza on the Mediterranean coast, the main defensive Turkish position in southern Palestine. After two failed attacks in March and April 1917, the Third Battle of Gaza began as a feint. British and Dominion forces bombarded the garrison for 6 days, and 3 divisions were deployed to fool the Turks into believing that another frontal attack was imminent, while the real effort was made at Beersheba. Held by 1,000 Turkish riflemen, 9 machine guns and 2 aircraft, Beersheba's defensive position was extended by a series of trenches and redoubts. On its east and south, however, the trenches were not protected by barbed wire. Ottoman forces were also relying on the forbidding open terrain and the absence of water to defend Beersheba. When the Australians of the 4th Light Horse Brigade arrived, with their horses carrying heavy packs of about 120 kilograms, the only water available was that in the wells of Beersheba. The attack was launched on the 31st of October, but by late afternoon, the British 20 Corps had made little headway. General Grant gave the order to the 12th Light Horse Regiment. "Men, you're fighting for water. There's no water between this side of Beersheba and Asani. Use your bayonets as swords. I wish you the best of luck." The Australian Light Horse was used as cavalry for the first time in a battle that some would claim was the last great cavalry charge. While the 4th Light Horse Regiment dismounted at the trenches and took its objective on foot, many in the 12th Light Horse Regiment went straight through to take the town. Private Walter Keddy of the 12th Light Horse Regiment recalled, "We were all at the gallop, yelling like mad. Some had bayonets in their hand, others their rifle. Then it was a full stretch gallop at the trenches. The last 200 yards or so was good going, and those horses put on pace and next were jumping the trenches with the Turks underneath. When over the trenches, we went straight for the town." Because of the shock value and sheer speed of the charge, Beersheba was taken before it could be destroyed by the retreating Turkish force. The Turkish defenders suffered many casualties, and between 700 and 1,000 were captured. 31 light horsemen were killed in the charge and 36 were wounded, and at least 70 horses died during the charge. The fall of Beersheba opened the way for a general outflanking of the Gaza-Beersheba line. After severe fighting, Turkish forces abandoned Gaza on the 6th of November and began their withdrawal into Palestine. Today, we remember Beersheba. We pay our respects to the men and women commemorated here on the Roll of Honour and to the survivors who return home. This evening, we warmly welcome Mr. John King, President of the Returned and Services League of Australia, ACT branch. And as always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Second Lieutenant Francis James Burton. Francis Burton was born on the 22nd of December 1893 in Nullen, near Minnip in Victoria. Known as Frank, he was one of 9 children, born to farmer Frederick Burton and his wife Mary. Frank received his education at the local state school and later joined the Australian Light Horse and Citizens Militia Forces as a volunteer. During this time, he worked alongside his father on their family farm. When war was declared in 1914, Frank Burton was among the first in the district to enlist, joining the Australian Imperial Force on the 22nd of August 1914. He was assigned to C Squadron of the 4th Australian Light Horse Regiment and began a short period of training in Australia. He embarked for active service from Melbourne on the 19th of October 1914, sailing aboard the troop ship Wilshire. Burton arrived in Egypt in early December and continued training with his new comrades. His regiment did not arrive on the Gallipoli Peninsula until late May of 1915, when light horse units were deployed without their horses. Burton's unit was briefly dispersed to reinforce infantry units along the line before being reunited in early June. Much of their time was spent defending the Anzacs' precarious position, particularly around Ryrie's Post, where they were involved in several minor attacks and raids. After his promotion to corporal in July, Burton wrote home to his family, saying, "We are in the firing line and my 2 mates are jolly fine fellows. We occupy number 5 post, which is a very good one to sleep in, as well as to get a good view of the Turks' trenches, which are only 40 or 50 yards away." Like many who succumbed to the difficult conditions of life on the front, Burton became ill in October and was evacuated to Egypt for treatment. He rejoined his unit in February 1916 after the Allies abandoned the Gallipoli campaign. Afterwards, his unit was engaged in rear security tasks in the Suez Canal zone throughout much of 1916, during which time Burton was promoted to sergeant. In 1917, the 4th Light Horse moved up to the Sinai Desert as British and Dominion forces advanced. Burton was made Squadron Sergeant Major in March, and after a short stay in hospital was commissioned as a Second Lieutenant in September. A month later, his unit was drawn into their first major action of the war during the 3rd Battle of Gaza. Attempting to outflank the enemy stronghold in the city of Gaza, Allied units made a plan to attack the fortified town of Beersheba to the east. The town was held by 1,000 Turkish riflemen, 9 machine guns and 2 aircraft, and it was attacked by an Allied force of more than 40,000. Capture of Beersheba was not only essential to taking Gaza, but to securing water for the troops and horses. When the town had not fallen by the afternoon of the 31st of October, the 4th Australian Light Horse Brigade was sent in to capture Beersheba in a cavalry-style charge. Charging on the town, the troops were spotted by Turkish gunners who opened fire as they approached the trenches. Frank Burton was in the front line of his sector. As he charged, he was wounded by enemy fire as his horse jumped over the trenches. A stretcher bearer stopped to help. Burton told him, "Go on, leave me. I'm done." Fierce and bloody fighting ensued as the Australians attempted to push the enemy back. Eventually, they succeeded in taking the town, mostly intact. The capture of the town turned the Gaza-Beersheba line, and a week later, the city of Gaza fell, leading the way for the Allies to enter Jerusalem. The 4th Light Horse Brigade suffered more than 60 casualties during the charge on Beersheba. Among the dead was Second Lieutenant Frank Burton. His friend and comrade, Lieutenant Frank Phillips, wrote to Burton's mother, "You will have received word that you have lost your boy, and I have lost my best pal. I must convey in words my deep sympathy for you and your loss, which I feel keenly. We were in the attack on Beersheba at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October and were told it must fall that night. It fell, and Frank was part of the price of the victory. Frank fell at the head of his men and died almost immediately. If I get through, I will tell you all that I can of Frank, who was loved and respected by officers and men. A gallant gentleman and true pal lies on the plain before Beersheba. Frank Burton was buried near where he fell, at Beersheba War Cemetery. He was 23 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of sacrifice and service told here at the Australian War Memorial. We will now remember 2nd Lieutenant Francis James Burton, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please be upstanding for the reading of the ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.